Good morning, everyone. I'm John Lightfoot, head of the client-facing team at Ultimate Finance. I just want to extend a warm welcome to those of you dialing in for the first time and a welcome back to those of you who dialed in last week. This is the second in our series of webinars focusing on mental health. For those of you that missed the first one, it is available on YouTube for catch-up. This week, Kate from Appleyard will be looking at kindness and its role in mental health in the workplace. Kate will demonstrate how practicing kindness can, through ensuring strong mental health, have a direct impact on the bottom line of your business. It should be an excellent session. As I mentioned last week, Kate has over 20 years HR experience and is a mental health first aider, so she is well placed to guide us through this topic. Over to you, Kate.
Many thanks, John, for that introduction. And good morning to you all. As many of you in HR and line management roles will know, you don't always need or have a qualification in mental health to have to manage it in your everyday life. Many of you will be regularly communicating with people both in and out of work, and in your communications potentially impacting upon their mental health. So hopefully today's theme of kindness will give you some food for thought in how you might do this. It's been interesting when I tell people this week that I'm delivering a webinar on kindness, I get a very mixed response. Some people think it's all a bit woolly and question how it could possibly impact on business. Some think it's just common sense, or as somebody said to me, I think it was motherhood and apple pie. And why would we need to listen to a webinar about it? So many, and I hope that I can include you in this, are interested to learn more, hoping for something to take away to make the world of work a more effective place. Though if some of you still need convincing, let's hope I can help you with that this morning. So last week we looked in detail at what is mental health. And this week we are talking about kindness. But before we look at this, let's just refresh our understanding again of exactly what is mental health, because it's key to tying all this together. So just to recap, mental health is part of our overall health. And there is no health without mental health. It affects how we feel, think, how we behave, how we cope with the ups and downs of everyday life, how we feel about ourselves and our life, and critically at the moment, how we feel about ourselves and our future, and how stress affects us. So when we think about kindness, it's worth remembering all these things and how an act of kindness can impact our mental health. So in these challenging times, now more than ever, we feel that it's more important to stay connected in absolutely any way we can. And at a time when the future is uncertain and we feel disconnected, the smallest act of kindness can have the biggest effect. The dictionary definition of kindness is quite simply the quality of being friendly, generous and considerate. But when you talk to people about kindness, you sometimes feel that people think it can be a risky situation. So in offering kindness, we can risk looking foolish or being taken advantage of, and at times that risk taking means that we decide not to bother. I'm sure you'll all be familiar with the Mental Health Foundation and the regular Mental Health Awareness Week that takes place every May. So the Mental Health Foundation have been setting the theme for the Mental Health Awareness Week for the last 20 years. And up until April, the theme for this year's Awareness Week was sleep, which is obviously something very key to our mental health. And there have been massive plans put in place prior to COVID-19. However, on reflection, Mark Rowlands, the Chief Executive of the Mental Health Foundation, felt that now more than ever, we needed to rediscover kindness in our daily lives. And he said that he wanted to use the Mental Health Awareness Week to celebrate all the acts of kindness that are so important to our mental health, and therefore take from this a discussion on the kind of society that we want to shape as we come out of the pandemic. He quoted saying, "Kindness unlocks our shared humanity and is central for our mental health. It has the potential to bring us together with benefits for everyone, particularly at times of great stress." Another definition of kindness is that by doing something towards yourself and others, Another definition of kindness is that by doing something towards yourself and others, this something is motivated by a genuine desire to make a positive difference. And when I talk to people about examples of kindness, what would it mean to you if somebody was kind to you? And I look at all those examples and summarize them, I realize that these are not passive things. They require you to do something to be kind to somebody else. We know from the research that the Mental Health Foundation have done that kindness and mental health are deeply connected, and there are definite benefits of altruism. And the Mental Health Foundation described them, as you can see on the slide, that they help others feel good, they create a sense of belonging and reduce isolation, they help keep things in perspective, that they help make the world a happier place, and that kindness is definitely contagious. So if you offer somebody an act of kindness, it may be very well that it inspires them to do the same for somebody else. And the more you do for others, the more you do for yourself. Helping others can promote physiological changes in your brain that are linked with happiness. Volunteering, as an example, helps us feel a sense of belonging and also gives us an opportunity to make new friends. And there are many people who just don't realise the impact that a different perspective can have on their outlook on life. Helping others less fortunate than yourself can put this into perspective and increase positivity. I could talk all morning to you about the benefits of kindness. Once you've found the courage to take that step and spread a little happiness, it can be a very easy thing to do. And once you start, it can impact many different areas of your life as well as everybody else's. So on the back of the Mental Health Foundation, ACAS also got involved and looking at how that impacts business, work, employers, because mental health isn't something that just happens at home, it happens in every area of our life. So to coincide with Mental Health Awareness Week, ACAS published some new guidance that aims to promote a kinder approach to relationships at work. And if you go online and you search ACAS, you'll be able to see the documentation in detail. At the moment, it's so difficult to think that life is difficult. We're all in very different situations, and therefore it can be very easy to judge rather than to be kind. And whether you're a manager or an employee, it's important to realise that each person is unique and that each situation is very different. So you may have one employee who's at home, having been furloughed 3 months ago, and unfortunately they've had little communication from the manager, so they don't really know what's going on, what to expect, how long this is going to last. And as a result of that, they feel anxious about the future, anxious about money, they live alone. Lockdown has meant that they haven't seen anyone for weeks, which has left them feeling lonely, isolated and losing their confidence. Now they're lucky that they've got some outside space and they've managed to use that, which has been a great help. But in their team at work, there's another lady who hasn't been furloughed, but she's been expected to work from home. She's also trying to look after 3 children, aged between 1 and 7. And she's never felt so much pressure and she doesn't know where to turn. And yet again, like the initial lady, she hasn't had very much support or contact from her manager. She's sad about that because she really could do with somebody to talk to, but she's also quite relieved that she's been left on her own because she doesn't want to admit that she's finding these situations so difficult, as she's worried that there might be redundancies in the future. But on the flip side, she's also really angry because she knows that her colleague has been furloughed and has spent 3 months sitting outside at home, relaxing and getting a fabulous tan. But while she's getting angry about this, you know, the other lady is seeing her colleague as being somebody who's got work to do, and your perception of everybody else's situation might not actually be right. It's a bit like social media, isn't it? So the list of situations goes on, and I'm sure you've heard many more. So the lady working from home has no idea how lonely and anxious her colleague feels, and the lady with the perfect tan is envious because the other lady gets up for work every day and is part of a busy household. It's really key as a manager to maintain regular contact, take a step back, don't judge, and give the employee an opportunity to talk, and that really means that you need to listen. And don't underestimate the level of support that simply listening to somebody can be. It's easy to see why people are struggling right now for a number of reasons, but many of those watching the uprisings unfold from their homes feel powerless, overwhelmed, terrified or angry. It's a lot to handle, and it's having a disastrous impact on mental health. All over social media, you may have seen that people are reporting they're crying a lot, they're having trouble sleeping, they're feeling terrified, and they're feeling irritable. This isn't, you know, just about coronavirus. It's about all kinds of different things that as individuals, unique individuals, we're having to deal with. And it's happening now, and employees need to be able to talk about it and deal with it at work. Again, I would reiterate that in this situation, the ability to listen is key and understand it from a different perspective. It's not necessary always to comment or to have an opinion, just to be there and be able to point people in the direction of support if they need it. Diversity and inclusion doesn't need to, you know, cover only the situation we're seeing unfolding at the moment with Black Lives Matter. It covers disability, it covers many, many more areas. It's about understanding everybody as an individual, keeping a check-in with them and making sure that we're supporting personal feelings and experiences. So a kinder approach to relationships at work is also about understanding that physical health is intrinsically linked to mental health. And the more conversations I am having with my clients about being safe, we've all been talking about being safe over the last few months. I'm sure that all of us will have urged one another to stay safe, and that's all been about physical health. But it also links to our mental health. And at the moment, the meaning of safe will be different for everybody. It may mean staying in your house and not having contact with anyone, or working from home and only leaving the house for essential shopping. Or some people may be returning to the workplace, interacting with people, because in their minds this has got to be better than staying at home alone for any longer. I'm sure you can think of others at either end of the spectrum, but how do we know which is right? And I don't know that we do. What do we know that's forcing individuals to be in a situation that they don't, what we do know is that forcing individuals to be in a situation they don't perceive to be safe can negatively impact their mental health. Next week, we're going to talk about getting your teams back to work and support in doing that. And you will, I'm sure, have had conversations with employees about returning to work, and many of them will have very different views on it. Some of them won't be able to wait to get out there, and some of them will be very nervous. So it's just about making sure that you are kind in your communication and you understand that staying safe means different things for different people. And leading on from that, internal communications has got to be key for us right now. So rather than focusing on an instruction, if you are communicating and when you are communicating with your teams, try and look at giving a blend of different communications. So you need your strong messages, and I use the word strong messages rather than instructions, but you also need the opportunity for to share personal experiences of everybody within the business. And this can be done through one-to-one meetings, team calls, and positive social networks that can be set up internally. Ensure that you're communicating with all your employees. And this is really, really key, that you're getting a consistent message out to everybody. This includes those working in your business premises right now, those working from home, those who are furloughed, and those who are, are under consultation of redundancy, for which there are a number of people right now. Remember, one size doesn't fit all, and it may be that when you are communicating with people, you want to include everybody, but you need to make sure that you tweak it so that when it lands in a positive way. So I'll give you an example of something that's happened with one of my clients in the last couple of weeks. So sending an email to all staff in the business asking for their feedback about what it's like to work in the business to support updating the website might seem really positive, a great step. Everybody's given the opportunity to come back and think about the positives rather than the negatives in the current situation. But if some of those people are currently at risk of redundancy, it might not be seen as particularly kind. So even if the intention was simply to include everybody, it may not land in a very positive manner. So it doesn't mean to say that you can't send that communication to all staff, but it might just mean that certain groups will need the wording reviewed, checked, tweaked, so that it does land positively. Because everybody will have a viewpoint. It's just about making sure it's framed in the correct manner. Employers have a duty of care towards their staff, and ensuring that we communicate with them to check in to see how they are in this remote working landscape is important. It's also important not to be afraid to ask about mental health. How are you? But not just how are you, how are you and what about your mental health? How is your mental health? How are you coping? We touched on this last week where we talked about really making it count. And when you ask somebody how they are, it's not just a tick box. It does give the opportunity for people to respond. So let a little period of silence after you've asked the question just sit there, because people might not be chomping at the bit to be able to share all that with you. Give them the opportunity to take a deep breath if they need to and really tell you exactly how they are. I would also suggest that you consider looking at online training packages while we're in this situation of remote working. So this can assist managers in looking after both their own mental health and the mental health of their teams. And it also gives everybody the opportunity to work through this at their own speed. I'm just going to give you one example of an online training package that I've come across recently. This is something called Champion Health. It's quite new, and the reason I'm mentioning it now is because they've been offering the packages free of charge during lockdown. I think the free period is still available until the 22nd of June. So if you are interested and you're quick, you might still have time to check it out. Obviously, there are other mental health online training courses available, but I just mention it because there's no cost attributed to it at the moment. And again, as we discussed last week, not everyone is going to show obvious signs that they're struggling with their mental health. And it's important not to jump to conclusions. some of the signs that you may be aware of in the workplace, so that people are appearing tired, anxious or withdrawn, though I'm sure we all know that we don't necessarily look our best on a Zoom call. There could be an increase in sickness, though it's really easy to mask that at the moment because people aren't necessarily in the office. It's also easy to mask being late to work, but you may be able to pick up on some signs if people are struggling to communicate with you. Another one is changes in the standard of work or the ability to focus on tasks, being less interested in tasks that they previously enjoyed, and changes in their usual behaviour, their mood, or how they behave when they interact with people that they work with. And again, this is a difficult one to spot in the current climate because people are more reticent to speak and come forward on Zoom calls. It's not the easiest method of communication. The sooner you are aware that one of your team is struggling with their mental health, the sooner you can support them. And if you're not checking in with them, communication isn't there, you're unlikely to be able to spot this and then move to a position of support. And as we discussed last week, examples of support could be pointing them in the direction of their GP, or even suggesting they have a chat with a mental health first aider if you have those within your business. We also talked last week about putting our own life jacket on before helping others. And we need to think about how we're going to take care of ourselves and sustain our mental and physical health during this time. Being there for others, whether that's your role as a manager, you're the HR director, you are the business owner. You could also be a parent, a child, and all these can take a toll on our mental health. And before we come to the end of this presentation, I would really like to remind you of the importance of looking after yourself. Last week we talked about self-help strategies, and I would refer you back to that slide that gave you examples of support strategies that we looked at. One size doesn't fit all, so identify which of those work for you. And you may remember I referred to the mental health hashtag of address your stress that I find really useful. It's just something to put in the back of your mind and remind yourself if you do feel that you are starting to struggle. And it doesn't, it might just be that you need a break, you need to move away from your desk, you need to give yourself 10 minutes to put things into perspective. To come back and reread an email to make sure that you really have got the true meaning from it and not a meaning that you are perceiving. So they don't have to be big support strategies. They just need to be there so that you are conscious and you are allowing yourself that time to support yourself. So in summary, kindness is many things, both at work or in everyday life. There are some quick wins there. There are some situations which require a little bit of thought, but they are things that we can all be more aware of and build into our everyday lives. You're being respectful and considerate of everybody's situation, just going back to looking at the people you've got within your team, your colleagues. Who would you normally check in with? The person that you sit next to, the person you talk to when you go make a cup of coffee, just because you're not in the same building, in the same room with them. They're still out there. Have you given the time just to drop them a line or give them a ring? And consider everybody's situation before reacting. Really think about what's going on for them and might that have impacted on how they've responded to you. Think about what random acts that you can offer. I mean, one of the obvious ones that really doesn't take an awful lot of effort is holding a door open for somebody, which unfortunately we're probably not as keen to do right now. But those are the little things. It's just smiling at people. It's just saying hello to people as we pass, saying goodbye to people, and maintaining eye contact, listening, caring, and if somebody needs it, getting support for them or offering support from yourself. And finally, as I started with the same slide as we had last week, I'd like to finish with the same slide as we had last week. And really that's to reiterate that the takeaway message from this presentation really remains the same as last week. Everybody in your business has mental and physical health. You will have strategies for supporting their physical health. Ensure that you have the same for mental health. In both the long term and the short term, this will save the business money. Having a well-being or a mental health strategy is proven to help with your presenteeism levels, your absenteeism levels, and this includes reducing your levels of absence cost. It will increase your levels of productivity and engagement. And I'd like to leave with a challenge today to be conscious of being kind and try and spot an opportunity where you can do something nice for somebody else, specifically at work. I hope you've learned something today, and many thanks for joining us. We're just going to check the question chat now and let you know if we have got any questions this morning. But before we do that, do join us next week. As I said earlier, we'll be looking at supporting your teams back to work. I appreciate that this is something that is ever changing with the changes in legislation and the impacts there on individual businesses. But the intention from the presentation will be to give you some advice on how to keep your business moving while doing this. So we'll just move on to the questions, and thank you again.
Hi Kate, thanks a lot for that. It's John speaking again. We've had 2 or 3 questions come in, so is it okay if we just go through them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the first one, what do you do if you spot someone with signs of stress? Speak to them, point them in that direction, but they don't do anything about it. You can't make them, and you still have ongoing issues with them. Any advice?
You can't make them. It's you can't make anybody deal positively with mental health, and it's difficult to get engagement sometime with individuals. What I would recommend doing is making sure that you regularly check in with them to give them the chance to listen. The research into mental health support is that the biggest thing that you can do for somebody struggling with their mental health is listen. So they don't want to be bombarded. They don't want you ringing in the morning, in the afternoon, but it might be helpful to arrange a weekly call with them and let them know that you are concerned about their mental health. Acknowledge that you can see that they're struggling and that they are displaying signs of stress and that you are there for them. Reiterate the point, but don't overdo it. But I would definitely recommend keeping a regular catch-up call in the diary, and if you can do it on a video link, even better, because you can then at least see them. That would be my advice, John.
Cool, yeah, so it's kind of an ongoing, the support is an ongoing process really, as opposed to the moment in time thing, and at some point in that process, hopefully the individual will recognise they've got an issue and kind of seek the advice and help that they need. Yeah,
and it's not always the advice and help that you've suggested. And don't be disheartened by that. The fact that they've gone anywhere to get the support that they need is a positive thing, and they may not have taken that leap without your support. So yes, you can point them in some directions, but they may well have been doing their own research in on their own and found a different method of support that they feel suits them better. As I keep mentioning, one size doesn't fit all, but it's just making sure that you maintain contact and listen.
Okay, and then second question, being in a low frame of mind, I'm slightly skeptical of volunteering because I'm already highly emotional. Doing something for others where I'll be exposed to their hardships, struggles and situations, which is likely to be far worse than mine, makes me anxious that I'll become even more depressed. I tend to absorb the emotions of others around me. So, how does one distance one's own depression from being influenced by someone else's poor situation when volunteering?
You do find that people with depression get many benefits from volunteering for people with, you know, in worse situations than themselves. It's about perspective. It often helps people to put into perspective their own situation, and I'm not saying that that's any better or worse than anybody else's, but they do get the opportunity to see things through a different lens. It's also a distraction. It's also an opportunity to be very upfront with the organisation that you would like to become involved with and share with them your own personal situation, because they will be able to guide you. They will have some pastoral support within the organisation to guide you as to which is the best route of volunteering for you within that organisation.
Okay, thanks. And then you've met the third question. You've mentioned mental health first aid a number of times. Is it a recognised qualification? How do I access it? Are they delivering courses at the moment, online, for example?
Okay, so yes, it's a recognised qualification. There are a number of levels of mental health first aid. So there is a 2-day course that would give you a mental health first aid qualification. You can do shorter courses that give you mental health champion or ambassador status that don't go into the same level of detail. There aren't any being delivered face to face at the moment, obviously, but if you go on to Eventbrite, there are a number of different organisations who are starting to deliver them online. And the cost of them ranges really depending upon the provider, but you can often get them for anywhere between £200 and £300 per session. It's a 2-day course. It gives you an understanding of mental health in more detail than we've covered. It will talk about the different types of mental health. And in some cases goes into in all cases goes into quite a level of detail, all the way through to talking about suicide and how to cope with people who are talking about completing suicide. But yeah, if you go on to Mental Health England, First Aid England, you'll be able to find examples of providers. But for your sort of local area, if you go on to Eventbrite, you'll also be able to find a number of providers online there at the moment.
Okay, brilliant. And then we've just had a couple of people asking where they can find the first webinar. So we'll make sure that we circulate where that can be found on YouTube. We'll send a link round after today's session. So I think that's our questions. Just want to say thanks a lot, Kate. Excellent investment of 35 minutes, and look forward to next week's session.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, John, and enjoy your day, everybody. I hope to speak with you next week.
Thanks a lot.